Okay, so overall, I thought Where Was I was a much better reading than Where Am I? And I think that's mainly because in the back on the reflections, it talks about how the scenario that the author described was much more realistic than the one before. It was closer to becoming like a reality. And which brings me to the TED Talk, which was far more interesting. So my first reaction to hearing the brainstorm and the monkey moving with the robotic arm and moving the robot, um, my mind was just blown. Like I was just like, oh my god, that's so cool. And but then I also started wondering about the potential complications and consequences of implementing something like that, and then like what are the ethical implications and the consequences as well. And some of the questions that I just thought of were, will is this something that could be applied to amputees, and would they do it? Because I think he mainly talked about people who couldn't move, and so is it potentially something that they could use for amputees? And then I wanted, like, what are the possible consequences? Because you always hear these great new technologies and methods, and the consequences of such are never really talked about, especially not in a TED Talk. And so, like, it's obviously not an easy task. So, what in their trials, or has there been anything where it caused such and such and such and such side effect? Like, what is the effect on the brain of having that type of experience? Like, yes, we can have it now, so now we need to know the effect of it and to know whether or not whether or not it outweighs the 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 costs of the other alternative, if that makes sense. And then lastly, what are some of the ethical implications of using something like this? Like in Spider-Man, you hear, with great power comes great responsibility, and the guy was talking about like all the great things he would do with it and stuff. But it would obviously be something that people could only use if they could afford it. So you would be able to move again if you could afford it, which is just like everything else in our world, except this is to a further extent. So what exactly would be the potential, like, landslide slope um, that could happen here? And so those were just some questions that I started thinking about, and I can, like, make guesses about what would happen. But you'd be curious to find out how it plays out in my lifetime, and by the time I, graduate from grad school, what types of projects will I be working on and things like that. So I guess I'll hear more about it later on. Um, I thought it was really cool. On a side note, that like it's really like uh, um I think it's really cool research, and like I would love to work on research like that when I'm older, um, because it was super cool, and that's all I have to say about that.